I never liked camping, but I have always believed that the most terrifying things in the world are not ghosts, demons, or monsters. It's the silence of nature, the kind of silence that makes you feel like something is watching you. Hello, my name is Ross Taylor, and 2 years ago, I made the worst decision of my life. I went camping in the Amazon rainforest. People call the Amazon beautiful. Endless rivers, towering trees, exotic animals, and endangered species fossils are available. But what people don't tell you is that the forest is alive in ways you cannot understand. And sometimes it watches you back. The whole trip started with a research expedition organized by a small wildlife group based in Manaus. Our goal was simple: document rare nocturnal wildlife. At least, that's what they told us. There were 5 of us. Stephen Fleming, our expedition leader, a tall man with a beard that looked permanently wet from humidity. Izzy Gaze, wildlife photographer. Ian Smith, survival expert. Vittori, local guide who had grown up near the Amazon. And me. I was just the videographer, the guy who recorded everything. If I had known what I would record, I would have never gone. We traveled deep into the forest by boat along the Amazon River. The river looked calm, but Lucas kept warning us, Amazon is not a forest, it is a world. The deeper we went, the darker the trees and large snakes became. Sunlight barely reached the ground. Vines hung like ropes from giant trees. The air smelled wet and rotten. And the sounds, God, the sounds. Insects screaming and birds chirping. Branches snapping somewhere far away. Sometimes it sounded like someone whispering. But Vittori said that was normal. It is just the forest breathing. I wasn't convinced. After 7 hours on the river, we finally reached a narrow, muddy shore. Vittori pointed to a thick wall of jungle. We camped there. The place looked untouched, no trails, no signs of humans, just endless green darkness. We carried our gear inside. This humidity hit me immediately. It felt like breathing through a wet towel. After half an hour of walking, we reached a small clearing. Mark smiled. Perfect campsite. We set up 3 tents, a small fire pit, camera equipment, and motion sensor wildlife cameras. Everything felt exciting, like the beginning of a documentary. But then Vittori said something strange. He stared into the jungle for a long time before speaking. We should not stay more than 2 nights. Mark laughed. Why? Vittori didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said quietly, some places in Amazon do not like visitors. And night in the Amazon falls fast. One moment it's evening, the next moment it's complete darkness. Our campfire barely pushed the darkness away. Beyond the light, the jungle looked like a black wall. Izzy started taking night photographs. Ian prepared food. Vittori sat silently near the fire. He looked nervous. Mark asked him why. Vittori finally spoke. There are tribes that avoid this area. Why? I asked. Vittori looked at me. Because of something they hear at night. Stephen chuckled. Animals? Vittori shook his head slowly. No. What then? Vittori leaned closer to the fire and whispered, something that sounds human. Around midnight, we heard it. At first, I thought it was a bird, a long, echoing call deep in the forest. But then it happened again, and this time it sounded like a voice, a distant voice, calling, soft, broken, almost like someone crying for help. Izzy froze. Did you hear that? Ian nodded. Yeah. Mark stood up. Probably monkeys.
Vittori looked terrified. No monkey sounds like that. The sound came again, closer this time, a faint whisper floating through the trees, and I swear I heard a word. Hello? My blood ran cold. Stephen grabbed a flashlight. I'm going to check. Vittori immediately grabbed his arm. No. Why? Vittori's voice was shaking. Because if you hear a voice in the jungle at night, he paused and looked into the darkness, you should pray it is human. The next morning, we discovered something disturbing. Footprints around our campsite. Bare human footprints, but something was wrong. They were too long, almost stretched, like someone had unnaturally long feet. Vittori crouched beside them, his face turned pale. Those were not here yesterday. Mark frowned. You think someone is watching us? Vittori whispered, I think something is curious about us. Izzy asked the question none of us wanted to say. What kind of thing? Vittori stood slowly and said a word I had never heard before. A curapira. So, Vittori explained that deep in the Amazon rainforest there is an ancient spirit, a guardian of the forest. It protects animals, punishes humans, and tricks hunters. Its name is curapira. But the worst part of the legend are its footprints. They are backwards, so hunters follow the tracks and get lost forever. Ian laughed. You're telling us a forest demon is stalking us? Vittori didn't laugh. He pointed at the footprints. Look carefully. We looked, and then my stomach dropped. The footprints were facing the wrong direction, as if whoever made them was walking toward us, but the prints looked like they were walking away. That afternoon, we checked the wildlife cameras. Most of them captured normal things, birds, small monkeys, a jaguar far away. But one camera showed something that made my hands shake. At 3:13 a.m., the camera activated. Something had passed in front of it, but it wasn't clear, just a blur, a tall, thin shape standing behind our tents, watching us sleep. And the worst part, the eyes. 2 pale, glowing eyes staring directly into the camera. Vittori refused to watch the footage again. He just said quietly, some things in Amazon are not animals, and they do not like being filmed. That night, the forest went silent. No insects, no birds, nothing. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. We sat around the fire, unable to speak. Then we heard it again, the voice. But this time, it was right outside the camp, and it sounded exactly like Mark. Hey guys. We all turned toward Mark, but he was sitting beside us, his face pale. Then the voice came again, from the jungle, perfectly copying him. Come here. Vittori whispered in horror, it learns your voice. And then something walked slowly around our tents, branches crunching, heavy breathing, circling us. But when we shined our flashlights, there was nothing there, only darkness and the feeling that something ancient was smiling at us from the trees.
That night, I barely slept. The jungle around our camp felt different now. It no longer sounded like animals moving through trees. It sounded like something watching us. The strange voice that copied Stephen's words kept echoing in my mind. Come here. I remember staring at the dark roof of my tent and thinking one thing over and over. Something in this forest knows we are here, and it's curious. When the first light finally came through the canopy of the Amazon rainforest, I stepped outside my tent. The air felt heavy, unnaturally quiet. Even the insects were silent. Ian was already awake. He looked exhausted. You hear it again? He asked. I nodded. Before I could say anything else, Sophia suddenly screamed from the edge of the campsite. We ran toward her. She was pointing at the ground. More footprints. Dozens of them. The same strange, bare human footprints surrounding our camp. But this time, something was worse. They were much closer. Some of them were only a few inches away from my tent. It had walked around us all night. Vittori looked terrified. "This is bad," he whispered. Mark tried to stay calm. "It could still be a person." Vittori shook his head slowly. "No human walks like that." Vittori asked us to look closely at the footprints. At first, they looked normal, but then he pointed at the toes. They were facing the wrong direction. Every single footprint looked like the person had been walking away from us, but the tracks clearly came toward the camp. The thing had walked backwards. My stomach twisted. Vittori whispered the name again. The Kudapira. He explained that according to jungle legends, the Kudapira is a spirit that protects the forest inside the Amazon rainforest. It confuses hunters, makes them lost. Sometimes it drives them insane, and sometimes they disappear. Mark sighed. "Vittori, we respect your culture, but we're scientists." Vittori didn't argue. He just said something quietly. Then explained the footprints. Stephen had no answer. After breakfast, we noticed something strange. Our supply box had been opened. The lid was still locked, but inside, half of our food was gone. Stephen frowned. "That's impossible." He inspected the lock. No scratches, no damage, nothing. But the sealed packets of food were missing. Vittori said something that made my skin crawl. "It is learning." "Learning what?" I asked. "How to open things." Stephen decided we would continue the expedition. Vittori strongly disagreed. "We should leave today," he insisted. Stephen refused. "We came here to document wildlife, and something is clearly here." Vittori's eyes widened. "Yes, that is exactly why we should leave." But Stephen was stubborn. Within an hour, we were hiking deeper into the jungle. The trees grew taller. The sunlight disappeared almost completely. Vines hung everywhere like giant snakes. The forest floor smelled rotten. After about 40 minutes of walking, we found something disturbing. A pile of bones. Animal bones. Hundreds of them. Deer, monkeys, birds, all picked completely clean. But what terrified me was the pattern. They were arranged in a circle, perfectly organized, like someone had carefully placed them. Izzy whispered, "Animals don't do this." Vittori looked ready to panic. "Something lives here." We were still examining the bones when Ian said he needed to use the bathroom. He walked behind some trees. "Don't go far," Stephen said. "Relax," Ethan replied. We waited. Then 6 minutes passed. Then 8. Then 15. Stephen frowned. "Ian?" No answer. We called his name again. Still nothing. Vittori looked frightened. He should not have gone alone. We started searching the area, and that's when Izzy found it. Ian's knife, lying on the ground. The blade was snapped in half. Something had broken steel. Stephen suddenly looked very serious. "Okay, everyone stay close." That's when we heard it, a voice deep in the jungle. Ian's voice. "Guys," it sounded weak, painful, like he was injured. "Help me." Izzy immediately ran toward the sound. Vittori grabbed her arm. "No, that's Ian," she shouted. Vittori shook his head violently. "No, it is not." But the voice came again, closer now. "Please." Stephen looked torn. It sounded exactly like Ian, but Vittori whispered something that froze all of us. If it was Ian, why did he walk away without footprints? We looked down at the ground. Vittori was right. There were no tracks leading away from where Ian disappeared. None. So the voice suddenly stopped. The jungle became silent again. Then something echoed through the trees. A laugh. Not human,
not animal, something strange and broken, like a child trying to imitate laughter. Sophia began crying. Mark whispered, "We are leaving, finally." But as we started walking back toward camp, we realized something horrifying. The trail we had taken was gone, completely gone. The forest looked different. Every direction looked the same. Vittori turned slowly in circles, his face pale. "This place is changing." Mark tried to stay calm. "That's impossible." Vittori whispered, "No, it is exactly what the Curupira does." Now, we walked for almost 3 hours trying to find the camp, but the jungle kept twisting. Paths appeared and vanished. Trees looked unfamiliar. Then I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Eyes, up in the trees. 2 pale, glowing eyes watching us. I pointed. "Do you see that?" Everyone looked up. The eyes vanished, but seconds later, they appeared again, behind another tree, watching, following. Vittori whispered, "It is guiding us." Stephen asked quietly, "Guiding us where?" Vittori looked into the darkness ahead and said the most terrifying sentence I had ever heard. "Not where, to what?" After some hours of walking, we finally reached a clearing, our campsite, but something felt wrong, very wrong. The tents were still there, the fire pit, our equipment, but everything looked moved, twisted. The tents were facing the opposite direction. The cameras had been turned around, and carved into a nearby tree trunk were 3 words in deep scratches. "Help me, Stephen." Izzy gasped. "That's Ian's writing." But Stephen looked confused. "I've never shown him my handwriting." Vittori slowly backed away from the tree and whispered, "It is learning more." And that night, none of us slept. We sat by the fire in silence. 3 left, lost in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, and somewhere in the trees, something was awake, watching, waiting. Then suddenly, from the darkness, we heard footsteps, slow, heavy, walking toward our camp. But the footprints appeared in the dirt before the sound reached us. Step, 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 walking backwards. And then Ian's voice whispered from the jungle, "Taylor, come here." But I knew one thing for certain. Ian was already gone, and whatever was calling me was much worse.
So, that night felt endless. The fire in our campsite burned weakly, while the darkness of the Amazon rainforest surrounded us like a living wall. Only 3 of us were left now, Stephen, Izzy, and me. Ian had vanished somewhere in the jungle, but the thing that terrified us most wasn't his disappearance. It was the voice that sounded exactly like him, and now it had learned another name, mine. "Taylor." The whisper came again from the forest, soft, broken, almost pleading. Izzy covered her ears. "I can't listen to that anymore." Mark tried to stay calm, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "That's not Ian," he said. But none of us truly believed that. Around 4 a.m., something strange started happening. The forest began to move. At least it felt like it. Trees that were far away earlier now seemed closer. Shadows shifted even though the wind was completely still. Vittori had warned us about this before we started the expedition. "The forest can confuse you," he had said. "Sometimes it feels like it is alive." But this was different. This felt intentional, like something was rearranging the jungle. Stephen whispered nervously, "Do you see that?" He pointed toward the edge of the camp. One of the wildlife cameras we had placed earlier was gone. Just gone. The metal casing it was attached to was still in the ground, but the camera had disappeared.
Izzy said quietly. Something took it. Then we heard it. Branches cracking. Above us. All three of us slowly looked up into the thick canopy. The trees in the Amazon rainforest are enormous. Some reach more than 200 feet tall. The leaves form a ceiling that blocks the sky. But something was moving up there. Heavy. Too heavy for a monkey. Too slow for a bird. Something large was climbing. The branches creaked again, closer this time. And then, two glowing eyes appeared between the leaves, watching us. Izzy gasped. "What is that?" Stephen raised his flashlight. The beam shot upward into the branches. For a brief second, we saw a shape. Tall, thin, hanging upside down from the tree. And then it moved, faster than anything I had ever seen. The branches exploded with movement as the creature vanished into the darkness. But one detail burned into my memory. Its legs. They were bent backwards. An hour later, something else happened. Our missing wildlife camera suddenly fell from the trees. It landed right beside the fire, hard. None of us had touched it. The metal casing was bent like someone had squeezed it, but the memory card was still inside. Stephen hesitated before removing it. "What if we see something we don't want to see?" Izzy whispered. Too late for that. Stephen inserted the card into our laptop. The screen flickered. The camera footage started playing. At first, we saw normal jungle movement, leaves, branches, insects. Then, suddenly, the camera activated again at 3:13 a.m. Something stepped into view, but it wasn't clear, just a tall shape in the darkness. Then, the shape leaned closer to the camera, closer, and then, until its face filled the frame. Izzy screamed. I couldn't move. The creature looked almost human, but wrong, very wrong. Its skin looked dark and rough like tree bark. Its hair was bright red, and its feet were completely backwards. The creature stared directly into the camera, and then it smiled. After watching the footage, none of us wanted to stay there anymore. Stephen finally agreed. We leave at sunrise. But the forest had other plans. Around 5 a.m., Izzy suddenly froze. She was staring into the darkness beyond the firelight. "Do you see that?" Stephen and I looked. At first, there was nothing. Then, slowly, a tall silhouette stepped between the trees, standing at the edge of the clearing. The creature from the camera. The Curupira. It was taller than a human, maybe 8 feet. Its long arms almost touched the ground, and its legs, those horrible backwards legs, looked twisted and unnatural. But the worst part was its face. It was smiling, like it was enjoying our fear. Izzy whispered, "Why is it just standing there?" Vittori had once said something about the Curupira. It doesn't always attack immediately. Sometimes it just watches. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it plays with its victims. Just when we thought things couldn't get worse, we heard footsteps behind us. Human footsteps, slow, dragging. We turned around, and my heart nearly stopped. Ian was standing there at the edge of the jungle, covered in mud, his clothes torn. Izzy ran toward him. "Ian!" But something felt wrong, very wrong. Ian wasn't speaking. He wasn't blinking. He was just standing there, staring at us. Stephen whispered nervously, "Ian, are you okay?" Ian slowly raised his head and smiled, but the smile looked exactly like the creature's smile in the video. Then Ian's legs moved, and we saw it. His feet, they were twisted, turned backwards. The moment we saw his feet, Stephen shouted, "Run!" We grabbed our backpacks and sprinted into the jungle. Behind us, we heard something terrifying. 2 sets of footsteps, one human, one something else, both chasing us. The forest around us seemed to close in. Branches scratched our skin, roots tripped our feet, and behind us, the voices kept calling. First Ian's voice, then Stephen's voice, then Izzy's voice. The creature was copying us all now. The deeper we ran into the Amazon rainforest, the louder the jungle became. Animals screaming, birds flying away, something huge crashing through the trees behind us. Izzy screamed, "It's catching up!" Then, suddenly, Stephen stopped and whispered in horror, "Oh no!" We had run straight into something we never expected to see. A huge stone structure, half buried under vines and trees. Ancient, forgotten, ruins hidden deep in the jungle. Vittori had once mentioned something like this. Lost temples built by unknown tribes centuries ago. And according to the legends, some places in the Amazon were not just protected by animals, they were protected by something much older. And behind us, the footsteps were getting closer. We slowly turned toward the ruins. The stone entrance looked like a dark mouth in the jungle. Something inside was moving, a deep echoing sound, like breathing. Vittori whispered, "Please tell me that's just wind." But I knew it wasn't, because whatever was inside the ruins was breathing slowly, like it had been sleeping for centuries, and our arrival had just woken it up. Meanwhile, behind us, the Curupira stepped into the clearing, smiling, as if it had successfully chased us exactly where it wanted us to go.
The jungle of the Amazon rainforest surrounded us like a living prison. Behind us, the Curupira. In front of us, something much worse. A temple, hidden deep in the jungle, half swallowed by trees and vines. The structure looked impossibly old, stone walls covered in moss, cracks filled with roots that had grown through the rocks. It was clear that the jungle had tried to destroy it for centuries, but somehow it still stood, and the entrance was wide open, dark, silent, waiting. Stephen whispered nervously, "We can't go inside that." Sophia nodded quickly. "Let's go somewhere else." But Vittori's old words echoed in my head. The forest changes, paths disappear, and the Curupira leads you where it wants. Behind us, the creature slowly stepped forward. Its long arms hung beside its body, its twisted backward feet pressed into the mud, and its red hair moved slightly in the humid air. But the creature wasn't rushing. It was smiling, like a hunter who had already caught its prey. Then Ian's voice came out of the creature again, but this time it sounded distorted, broken. "Go inside." Izzy grabbed my arm. "Stephen, it's making us choose." Stephen slowly backed toward the temple entrance. Inside might be our only chance. And that's when the breathing sound from inside the ruins grew louder. Deep, slow, alive. The moment we stepped inside the ancient temple, the temperature dropped. The air felt cold, unnaturally cold for the Amazon rainforest. The walls were covered with carvings, hundreds of strange symbols, animals, humans, and something else. Tall figures with twisted legs, creatures that looked exactly like the Curupira. Izzy shined her flashlight across the walls. These are ancient, maybe thousands of years old. Stephen studied the carvings. They're telling a story. I followed the sequence of images along the wall. At first, the carvings showed humans hunting animals, normal scenes. Then, the next carvings showed a strange creature appearing in the forest. Tall, red hair, backwards feet, the Curupira. But the next images were even more disturbing. Humans bowing to it, worshipping it, offering animals to it, and then offering people. Izzy whispered in horror. This wasn't just a legend. Stephen nodded slowly. This was a cult. We walked deeper into the temple. The corridor opened into a massive underground chamber. The ceiling was so high, our flashlights barely reached it. In the center of the chamber stood something terrifying, a huge stone statue, at least 15 feet tall. The statue looked exactly like the Curupira, but older, more monstrous. Its face had sharp teeth, its eyes were carved wide open, and its feet were carved backwards. Stephen whispered, "This temple was built for it." Then we noticed something else. The ground around the statue was covered with bones, human bones, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Some of them looked ancient, but others looked newer, too new. Sophia began shaking. People still come here. Then something behind us moved. A familiar voice echoed through the chamber. Ian's voice. "Taylor." The sound bounced off the stone walls, making it impossible to know where it came from. Izzy shouted, "Stop pretending to be him!" Silence followed. Then another voice spoke. This time, it was Stephen's voice. "Come here." Stephen looked terrified. "That's not me." Then my voice echoed through the chamber, perfectly copied. "Help me." The creature outside had learned all our voices, and now it was inside the temple. We heard the sound slowly approaching. Step, step, step. But the sound was strange because the footprints appeared in the dust before the sound happened, backwards, like something walking in reverse. The Curupira entered the chamber. Its tall, thin body moved slowly toward the statue. Its glowing eyes watched us carefully, but instead of attacking, it knelt right in front of the statue. Izzy whispered, "Why is it bowing?" Stephen suddenly understood. That statue isn't it. He looked up at the giant stone figure. That's something else, something older, something worse. Then the breathing sound echoed again, louder, much louder, from behind the statue. The ground trembled slightly, dust fell from the ceiling, and suddenly, two enormous glowing eyes opened in the darkness behind the statue. Eyes much larger than the Curupira's, ancient, hungry, watching us. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. Not human, not animal, something ancient, something that had lived inside the Amazon rainforest for centuries. The voice spoke slowly, like it had forgotten how to talk. "More humans." The Curupira lowered its head like a servant, and suddenly I understood the truth. The Curupira was not the monster. It was the guardian, the hunter, the thing that brought sacrifices to the real creature, the thing sleeping inside the temple. Izzy whispered, "Oh my God." The massive shadow behind the statue began to move. Stone cracked, roots snapped, and something enormous slowly stood up. Something far bigger than the Curupira, something that had been sleeping beneath the temple for centuries, and now it was awake. The chamber shook violently. The huge shape stepped forward from behind the statue. Our flashlights barely illuminated its body, but what we saw was enough. The creature was gigantic, at least 20 feet tall. Its skin looked like ancient tree bark. Its body was covered in vines and moss, and its eyes glowed like burning embers. Stephen whispered in disbelief, This thing has been here for thousands of years. The creature inhaled deeply, like it was smelling us. Then it spoke again. More humans. Behind us, the Curupira smiled. Its job was done. Stephen slowly stepped backward. "Run," he whispered, but something terrifying happened. The Curupira moved to block the temple entrance. It wasn't letting us leave. The giant creature stepped closer, each step shaking the ground. Izzy whispered in panic, "We're trapped!" And for the first time since we entered the Amazon rainforest, I understood the horrifying truth. The jungle wasn't trying to kill us. It was feeding us to something much older.
And the ancient temple hidden deep in the Amazon rainforest shook with every movement it made. Stone dust fell from the ceiling. The ground vibrated beneath our feet. And the worst part, the creature was staring directly at us. Its glowing eyes slowly moved from Stephen to Izzy, then finally to me. I could hear its breathing now, slow, heavy, hungry. Stephen grabbed my arm. "Run for the door!" But the moment we turned toward the temple entrance, we saw it. The Curupira, standing in the doorway, blocking the only way out. Its twisted backward feet pressed into the stone floor. Its red hair hung over its face, and that same horrible smile spread across its mouth. It wasn't attacking. It was waiting, like a shepherd guarding animals in a pen, making sure we didn't escape. The giant creature behind us took another step forward. The ground cracked beneath its weight. Izzy whispered, "We're trapped." Stephen suddenly shouted, "Split up!" Before I could react, he grabbed a burning piece of wood from the torch on the wall and threw it toward the Curupira. The creature hissed and jumped backward. That small movement created a narrow opening. "Go!" Stephen yelled. Izzy and I ran toward the doorway, but the giant creature behind us moved faster than we expected. One massive arm swung across the chamber. The stone statue shattered as the arm hit it. Pieces of rock exploded through the air. Stephen was thrown across the floor. He crashed against the wall with a sickening sound. "Stephen!" Izzy screamed. He didn't move. The giant creature roared. The sound was so deep it vibrated through my chest. The ancient temple walls began cracking. Roots tore through the stone ceiling as centuries of decay finally gave way. The Curupira stepped forward again, but this time it wasn't smiling. It was angry. Stephen's fire had burned part of its arm. Dark smoke rose from its skin. The creature screamed in rage, a high-pitched shriek that echoed through the entire temple. Izzy grabbed my arm. "We have to go!" But I looked back at Stephen. He was still lying on the ground, barely moving. The giant creature slowly leaned down toward him, opening its massive mouth. Rows of jagged teeth glistened in the flashlight beam. Suddenly, Stephen moved. He lifted his head slightly and looked at us. Blood covered his face. His voice was weak. "Run!" I shook my head. "We can't leave you." Stephen forced a smile. "Yes, you can." Then he did something I will never forget. He grabbed the flare gun from his belt, pointed it at the giant creature's face, and fired. The flare exploded in a blinding red light. The creature screamed as the burning flare stuck to its eye. The chamber filled with firelight. Stephen used his last strength to shout, "Now!" Sophia pulled me toward the exit. Behind us, the giant creature roared in fury, and the Curupira jumped aside as the burning flare lit the chamber. And now we sprinted out of the ruins and back into the dense jungle of the Amazon rainforest. Behind us, the temple collapsed. Stone walls crumbled. Ancient pillars crashed to the ground. The giant creature's roar echoed through the forest, but we didn't stop running. Branches cut our skin. Vines tangled our legs. The jungle was pitch black, but fear pushed us forward. Then suddenly Izzy stopped. "Taylor!" I turned. The Curupira was standing behind us again. Somehow it had already escaped the temple. It stepped slowly out from the shadows.
Its burned arm hung beside its body, but the wound was already healing. Its glowing eyes stared at us, and it spoke again in Ian's voice. "You cannot leave." Izzy whispered, "Why is it still chasing us?" I suddenly remembered the carvings inside the temple, the sacrifices, the humans being offered to the creature. The Kurupira wasn't just guarding the temple, it was feeding the ancient creature, and we were supposed to be the next offering. But the temple had collapsed, which meant something terrible. The giant creature was no longer trapped underground. It was free, somewhere in the jungle of the Amazon rainforest, and it was still hungry. The Kurupira tilted its head, listening. Then we heard something in the distance, heavy steps, huge, slow. The giant creature was moving through the jungle, following us. Trees snapped in the darkness far away. Birds screamed as they flew away. The Kurupira looked pleased. Its job was not finished yet. It slowly stepped toward us again, but this time, Izzy picked up a burning branch from our dropped torch and held it in front of her. The Kurupira hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowed. Izzy whispered, "Fire scares it." For the first time since entering the Amazon rainforest, we had an advantage, but only a small one. Because somewhere in the darkness behind the trees, something far larger was still coming. The ground trembled again. A deep roar exploded through the jungle, closer than before, much closer. Trees began falling somewhere behind us. Huge crashing sounds echoed through the night. The giant creature had found our trail. The Kurupira slowly stepped aside, like it was clearing the path, letting its master finish the hunt. Sophia looked at me with pure terror. "Taylor." "I know." I nodded. We had escaped the temple, but we were still trapped in the endless wilderness of the Amazon rainforest, and now 2 monsters were hunting us. One fast, one enormous, and both of them were getting closer.
Izzy and I ran blindly through the darkness. Branches tore at our clothes. The thick jungle of the Amazon rainforest seemed endless. Behind us, the ground still trembled with every distant step of the giant creature, and somewhere much closer, the Kurupira followed. We could hear its strange footsteps, soft, slow, but wrong, because the sound came after the footprints appeared. Step, 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 walking backwards through the jungle. Izzy kept holding the burning branch in front of her. The flame flickered wildly in the humid air. Every time the Kurupira came closer, it paused when the firelight touched its face. Vittori had been right. Fire scared it, but only a little. The creature still followed us, just staying outside the light, watching, waiting, almost like it knew the fire would eventually go out, and when it did, we would be helpless again. Suddenly, we heard something terrible behind us, a massive crash, then another, trees falling, huge ones. The giant creature from the temple was moving through the jungle, and it was getting closer, much closer. Each step sounded like a small earthquake. The ground vibrated beneath our feet. Izzy whispered in panic, "It's catching up." Then another sound joined the chaos, birds screaming, hundreds of them flying away at once, animals running through the forest. Everything in the Amazon rainforest was trying to escape. Something enormous was coming. Just when we thought we couldn't run anymore, the trees suddenly opened. We stumbled into a clearing, but it wasn't natural. Wooden huts stood around us, broken, rotting, falling apart. An abandoned tribal village. The roofs had collapsed. Vines covered everything. It looked like no human had lived here for decades. But what terrified us were the bones. Animal skulls hung from wooden poles. Human bones were tied to the huts. Old tribal symbols were carved into the wood. Izzy whispered, "This place was abandoned in a hurry." I noticed something even worse. In the center of the village stood a huge wooden statue, and the statue looked exactly like the Kurupira. Backwards feet, long arms, wild hair, the same creature that had been hunting us. One of the huts had strange carvings on the wall. Unlike the temple carvings, these were much simpler, crude drawings made by villagers, but the message was clear. The first images showed people living peacefully in the jungle of the Amazon rainforest. Then the curupira appeared. Hunters disappeared. People got lost. The next drawings showed the giant creature from the temple, huge, towering above the trees, eating animals, then humans. The final drawing showed something interesting. Villagers holding torches, surrounding the curupira, the creature running away from the flames. Sophia pointed at it. Fire doesn't just scare it, it drives it away. That meant one thing. If we could make enough fire, maybe we could survive. We quickly gathered dry wood from the abandoned huts, broken furniture, rotten beams, anything that could burn. Within minutes, we had a large fire burning in the center of the village. The flames grew tall, lighting up the clearing, and just like we hoped, the curupira appeared at the edge of the firelight. But it didn't come closer. It stopped at the edge of the firelight, watching us. Its glowing eyes moved slowly between Sophia and me. Then it smiled again, but this time the smile looked different, almost patient, like it knew something we didn't. Then the ground shook, harder than before. The trees around the village began falling one by one. A massive shadow moved through the jungle. The giant creature had arrived. The enormous monster stepped into the clearing, and for the first time, we saw its full size. It was even bigger than we thought, at least 25 feet tall. Its body was covered with vines and moss, like a walking tree. Its glowing eyes burned in the darkness, and its massive claws dug into the ground. The firelight reflected off its bark-like skin. Izzy whispered, "This thing is impossible." But the giant creature didn't seem afraid of the fire, not at all. It slowly stepped closer. The curupira moved aside, like a servant making room for its master. Then something terrible happened. The giant creature leaned down toward the curupira and spoke. Its deep voice echoed across the abandoned village. "More humans." The curupira nodded slightly, like it understood. Then it pointed directly at us. The realization hit me like a hammer. The curupira wasn't protecting the jungle. It was hunting, gathering sacrifices for its master. The giant creature opened its massive mouth. Rows of huge, jagged teeth glistened in the firelight. It stepped toward us again. Izzy grabbed my arm. "Taylor, the fire isn't stopping it." And she was right. The flames scared the curupira, but the giant creature didn't care about fire at all. It was too big, too old, too powerful. Suddenly, the giant creature swung its massive arm. One of the huts exploded into splinters. Flaming wood flew everywhere. The fire spread quickly across the dry huts. Within minutes, the entire village began burning. Huge flames shot into the sky. Smoke filled the clearing. The giant creature roared in anger as burning beams fell around it. Even it didn't expect the whole village to catch fire. The curupira shrieked and retreated deeper into the jungle. The flames were too strong now. Izzy shouted over the roar of the fire, "Now, run!" The burning village created chaos. Smoke blinded the giant creature. Trees fell around us. The curupira disappeared into the darkness. For the first time since entering the Amazon rainforest, the monsters had lost control of the hunt, and that gave us our only chance to escape. Izzy and I ran away from the burning village. The sky above the forest glowed orange from the massive fire. But as we ran deeper into the jungle, something felt wrong again. The forest had become silent, too silent. No insects, no birds, nothing. Then we heard a whisper behind us, soft, familiar. "Taylor." It was Izzy's voice, but she was running beside me. We slowly turned around.
and in the darkness between the trees, two glowing eyes opened again. The Curupira had returned, and this time it wasn't alone.
The jungle had become completely silent. Sophia and I stood frozen in the darkness of the Amazon rainforest. Behind us, the abandoned village was burning. Huge flames rose above the trees. Smoke rolled through the forest like a black storm. But something worse stood in front of us. Two glowing eyes, watching from between the trees. The Curupira had returned, and this time, it wasn't hiding. The Curupira slowly stepped forward into the faint light of the burning village behind us. Its twisted backward feet left strange marks in the mud. Its burned arm had almost completely healed, and the creature was smiling again. But something about it looked different now. It wasn't just watching us anymore. It was imitating us. Suddenly, the creature spoke in Izzy's voice. "Taylor, help me." Izzy grabbed my arm. "I didn't say that." Then the Curupira spoke again, this time in Steven's voice. "Run, Taylor." Then Ian's voice. Then my own voice. The creature was copying every sound it had heard perfectly. But then it did something even worse. It screamed, a horrible scream that sounded like every voice at once. The sound echoed through the jungle, and far away in the darkness, something answered. The deep roar of the giant creature rolled through the trees, closer than before, much closer. The burning village had not killed it. If anything, the fire had made it angry. The ground began shaking again. Heavy footsteps echoed through the jungle of the Amazon rainforest. The giant creature was coming straight toward us. Izzy whispered, "We can't fight both of them." She was right. The Curupira stood in front of us. The giant monster was coming from behind. We were trapped between them. Then suddenly Izzy pointed through the trees. "Look!" Through the thick jungle vines we saw something reflecting the firelight. Water. A wide river flowing through the forest. A branch of the Amazon River. The current looked strong. Dark water rushed between the trees. It might have been dangerous, but it was our only chance. Izzy said quickly, "If we reach the river, the current might carry us away." The Curupira stepped closer, blocking our path. Its glowing eyes stared directly at us. Then it slowly shook its head, like it was saying, "You're not leaving." The giant creature burst through the trees behind us. Its enormous body crushed everything in its path. A massive tree snapped like a toothpick as the monster pushed it aside. Its glowing eyes locked onto us immediately. Food. The ground shook with every step it took. Izzy grabbed a burning branch from the village fire that had fallen nearby. She waved it toward the Curupira. The creature shrieked and stepped backward. Just enough space. "Run!" she shouted. We sprinted toward the river. Behind us we heard two different sounds. The heavy crashing steps of the giant creature and the strange backwards footsteps of the Curupira, both chasing us. The jungle became more difficult as we ran. Thick vines blocked the path. Roots rose from the ground like traps. The jungle of the Amazon rainforest felt like it was trying to slow us down. Branches scratched our faces, mud pooled at our feet, and the sound behind us kept getting closer. The giant creature roared again, a deafening sound that made birds explode out of the trees. Izzy stumbled over a root and fell. I pulled her up quickly. "Keep moving!" But when we looked back, the Curupira was suddenly much closer than before. Too close. The creature tilted its head. Then it moved, faster than anything I had ever seen. 1 second it was 20 feet away. The next second it was right behind us. Its long arms stretched toward Sophia. I swung a burning branch toward its face. The flames touched its skin. The Curupira screamed and jumped backward. But that brief moment was enough. The giant creature burst into the clearing behind us. The ground exploded under its weight. Its enormous hand slammed down where we had been standing a second earlier. Mud and roots flew everywhere. We were almost crushed. Finally, we burst through the last wall of trees. The river was right in front of us. Wide, dark, fast. The current of the Amazon River rushed violently between the muddy banks. Izzy looked terrified. We might drown. I shook my head. If we stay here, we die for sure. Behind us, the Curupira appeared again, and the giant monster was only seconds away. The monster pushed through the trees. Its enormous body blocked the jungle behind us. It raised one enormous arm, ready to strike. Izzy grabbed my hand. "Jump!" We leaped into the river. The cold water swallowed us instantly. The current pulled us away with incredible force. I struggled to keep my head above the surface. Izzy grabbed a floating branch. We clung to it as the river carried us deeper into the darkness of the Amazon rainforest. Behind us, the giant creature roared in frustration. It smashed the riverbank with its huge fists. Water splashed everywhere, but the current was too strong. It couldn't reach us. For the first time, we might have escaped. As the river carried us away, I looked back toward the jungle. The burning village was now far behind us. The giant creature had disappeared into the trees, but something was still standing on the riverbank, watching us drift away. The Curupira. Its glowing eyes followed us in the darkness, and even from that distance, I could see the creature smiling, like it knew something we didn't, like the jungle wasn't finished with us yet.
The river dragged us deeper into the darkness. Cold water from the Amazon River rushed past my face as Izzy and I held onto the floating branch. The current was powerful. Every second it pulled us farther away from the burning jungle, farther away from the giant creature, farther away from the Curupira. Or at least, that's what we hoped. The thick trees of the Amazon rainforest stretched endlessly on both sides of the river. The sky above was barely visible through the massive canopy. Only small pieces of moonlight touched the water. Everything else was darkness. After several minutes, the sounds of the jungle slowly returned. Insects started buzzing again. Birds cried in the distance. But something still felt wrong. The river was too quiet. Izzy whispered while struggling to keep her head above water. "Do you think we escaped?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe the nightmare was over. But something deep inside me said the forest wasn't done yet, because the Amazon rainforest never lets its secrets leave easily. Then we heard something strange behind us, splashing. At first, I thought it was just the current hitting rocks, but the sound was rhythmic. Splash, 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 like something was moving through the water, following us. Izzy turned around slowly. Her face went pale instantly. "Taylor, what?" Her voice trembled. "Look!" About 30 feet behind us, something dark moved under the surface, a long shadow beneath the water, too big to be a fish, too fast to be a floating log. The shadow disappeared for a moment, then suddenly surfaced, not completely, just enough for us to see something horrifying. A pair of glowing eyes watching us from the water. My heart nearly stopped. No, the Curupira. Somehow it had followed us into the river. The creature's head slowly rose above the water. Its red hair floated around its face. Its glowing eyes stared directly at us.
but something about its movement was terrifying. It wasn't swimming normally. Its body was moving backwards through the water, just like its footsteps on land. The Curupira smiled again and spoke in a soft whisper, this time using Sophia's voice. "Taylor, wait." Izzy screamed, "Keep moving." We pushed the branch forward as hard as we could, but the current was already carrying us fast, and somehow the Curupira was keeping up. Suddenly, the water around us exploded. Something massive rose from beneath the surface. A huge, dark shape burst out of the river behind the Curupira. The giant creature. It had followed us. The monster stood waist-deep in the river. Water poured off its enormous body. Its glowing eyes burned in the moonlight. The monster roared, a deafening sound that echoed across the water. The Curupira turned toward it, almost respectfully, like a servant greeting its master. Then the giant creature spoke again. Its deep voice rolled across the river. "Bring them." The Curupira nodded slightly and began swimming faster toward us. Suddenly, Izzy pointed ahead. "Taylor, the shore!" The river curved sharply. A muddy bank appeared through the trees. If we could reach it, maybe we could escape. We kicked and paddled desperately. The current pushed us toward the shore, but the Curupira was closing the distance. 10 feet, 5 feet. Its long arm reached toward Izzy. I grabbed the branch and pushed hard toward the riverbank. Suddenly, our feet touched mud. We scrambled onto the shore, rolling onto the wet ground. Behind us, the creature's fingers barely missed Izzy's leg. The creature stopped at the edge of the water. Its glowing eyes stared at us, but it didn't follow. For a moment, none of us moved. We just stared at the creature. It stood perfectly still in the river. Then, something strange happened. The Curupira slowly backed away, its glowing eyes never leaving us, but it didn't cross onto the shore. Behind it, the giant creature roared again from the water, but even it didn't come any closer. It was like there was an invisible border. The monsters belonged to the jungle, and we had finally crossed beyond it, the edge of the Amazon rainforest. At sunrise, we found a small fishing boat tied to a wooden dock. A fisherman from a nearby village spotted us. We must have looked insane, covered in mud, bleeding, terrified. He took us to a small town near Manaus. Authorities later searched the jungle. They found nothing. No temple, no giant creature, no abandoned village, only our destroyed campsite and one broken wildlife camera. The official report blamed wild animals, heat exhaustion, hallucinations. But Izzy and I know the truth. Months later, the recovered wildlife camera footage was returned to me. Most of the files were corrupted, but one video still worked. The timestamp read 3:15 a.m. The camera pointed at our campsite, empty, silent. Then, something slowly stepped into the frame. The Curupira, standing only a few feet from the camera, its glowing eyes staring directly into the lens. The creature leaned forward and whispered softly, using my voice. "Taylor." Then the video ended. Even now, years later, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I hear something outside my window. Soft footsteps, walking slowly. But the strange thing is, the sound always comes after the footprints. Step, 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 walking backwards. And now I think about this forest and I remember that moments. Okay, good night, and meet's next story.